Mhm.
You want my clothes?
Right. Why don't you give them to Rick? He could use some women's clothes.
Huh?
He could use some women's clothes. Why are you donating a bunch of clothes?
It's big.
No.
And I wanted to keep it in case that I get fat again. To take to my sister Claudia.
That's a better idea.
Yeah, but they have a lot of clothes already.
No, I meant keeping it in case you know.
I need to.
Okay.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm awake. There was just a little blurb on the news, Channel 5 News about they're teaching Bob Ross method over at Sandy Springs Community Center, and they're having like 4 classes on good old Bobby.
Oh, okay. The community center.
Yeah, Sandy. I don't know where it is.
I'm not sure either. You know.
But they're teaching 3 more. One on the 15th, one on the 5th, and I don't know when the 3rd one is in March.
Mm-hmm.
But he's credited with teaching. I mean, getting more people interested in art than anybody else, supposedly.
Yeah, I would have to. Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Yeah.
So.
No, culturally, I mean, he was a huge influence. You know that.
Pardon me?
I said culturally, he was a huge influence.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you can like his art, dislike it, whatever, but, just the number of people who, have watched his show and gotten inspired to try to paint is, probably incalculable.
Well, he or started by a guy by the name of Bill Alexander,
Mhm.
who got him,
Yeah.
because he was a predecessor to teaching pretty much the same kind of a technique, wet on wet.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The difference is that Bob connected with a couple of other people who pitched it to PBS,
Right.
and they put it on a platform that was accessible to a wide range of people in the public.
Right.
And then they really kind of honed their whole approach down to that, like half hour, 45-minute programming schedule, so that, you saw the beginning to the completion of a painting within that period of time.
The first lady I worked with, named by Ani Kramer,
Mhm.
and she was a certified Bob Ross instructor. Anyway, just I thought it was interesting.
Did you watch the documentary?
Oh, I don't know that I have. I've watched an awful lot of his show. In fact, there's a resurgence on YouTube of his
Technique?
techniques. Yes.
Yes, so that's funny, y'all should bring him up, because I just finished watching a documentary of him a couple of days ago. What an interesting person, and like many artists, gone before his time. Just
Yes.
in his
Yes.
50s or 60s, and it's boom, it's gone. But what a movement, heaven. He's still going today. As a
Yep.
matter of fact, I was in a place yesterday, I can't remember where it was, but there was a whole shelf of his products.
Right.
And I said, oh, I know who he is.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you can, if you look at those documentaries and things, I mean, you can have a whole range of feelings about, kind of what happened, in his story, and how the people that he partnered with really kind of, took advantage of him, really badly.
I wondered about that. It's told from the perspective of family members, in-laws, and the people that he worked with most closely as partners, the one that I
Right.
saw at least. And I wondered about that.
Yeah.
He seemed to be so kind and unassuming.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered if he had been taken advantage of.
Well, I think that's a fair assessment, in light of all the things that have come out. Now, one of the interesting things is that, he was not in great shape, toward the end. And
Yes.
he ended up marrying this woman who was a nurse to him. And I think his hope was that in marrying her, she, in his will, he basically left her, a lot of power to his estate, thinking that she would help his son. And I don't know his son, but I did see part of the interview with him. And maybe he felt like his son wasn't business oriented enough that, he could make some wise decisions. And so he left it in her hands. And unfortunately, and, I could see why, what she did is, she got browbeat, by his partners into signing over all of his estate basically to them.
Oh my word.
And yeah, and they totally cut the rest of his family and his son, everything out. They got nothing out of any of that. Which,
What a shame.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
it happens all the time. It's so unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the struggles. As a creative person, as an artist, And I'm not talking, just visual art. I'm talking writers, musicians, anybody who's creative. One of, that's just too common of a story, to where, people that, that individual was connected to through business, or whatever, ends up taking advantage. And then the family, his direct heirs really are cut out of the whole loop and get nothing out of it. And,
Who are we talking about here?
well, we're talking about Bob Ross,
Oh,
yeah. But now,
that's too bad.
yeah, and there has been a long, arduous discussion about exactly that. And it kind of centered maybe 20 years ago around some changes to the copyright laws, in this country, and the process, for an artist to, to basically gain copyright of their own work. And, there was a lot of back and forth, and various parties got involved in it, and got it sidetracked, to where it became a taxation question. And, certain people jumped on board because, they literally wanted to tax, artists like myself, not for what we sold, but for our inventory, for what we had in our possession. They would have assessed a yearly tax on every piece of artwork that I have hanging in my house, even though I created it and hadn't even sold it yet. And so, yeah,
That needs to be revisited.
Yeah, it went sideways. Well, they didn't pass that, luckily. But they were looking for ways of extracting money out of people that they thought, were making a lot of money. The problem is, in the art community, and I'm not, again, it's not just visual art. It's the record industry, the, publishers, people like that. When you look at
Performing artists too?
Yeah, when you look at the vast number of people, who basically make a living, in a creative way, that's a huge number of people, but the vast majority of them are not wealthy, that might have worked, for some of the actors in Hollywood, or, for, some of the artists who are, now being sold at Sotheby's and things like that. But most of those artists who are being sold at that level, they're long gone. And that artwork is not in their family's possession. It's in other collectors, who are making the money on that. It's not the artist, unfortunately.
So, Charles, do you think they will revisit the copyright laws as in regards to artists?
Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because anytime you do that, you have certain factions who want to, they're looking for revenue,
Right.
And they're like, how can we extract as much money out of this industry, for the use of the government as we can, right? But the other side of that is that, and the section we haven't talked about yet, is kind of where it was headed intentionally in the beginning, which was not really about, taxation and making money. It was more about protecting the rights of the artist, the creator themselves, and the family. But that quickly got left in the dust. And that's kind of, again, that's one of the problems. When you take that conversation to certain venues, different people have different agendas, and the original conversation gets sidelined, and people tend to take it in different directions.
Well, for example, for you, would you take out a copyright on each one of your pictures?
Well, as the copyright laws are written now, okay, I don't need, you used to have to literally go to the Library of Congress, send them
Right.
an image,
Right.
actually fill out a piece of paper, and, pay a small fee.
That's what
to,
you do if you publish a children's book. You have to go through that whole procedure.
right.
Oh,
Yeah.
and with my photography, on each one of the photos I have on my digital camera, I have to have copyrighted, this by Gwen
Wow.
Darby.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now you
Hmm.
see, and that's your safeguard right there. Okay. Because now the way the laws are written, you don't have to do that filing. Okay. All you have to do is show intent, of copyright, that you're claiming this as your work. And the way that you can do that is by signing the work and dating it with a small c behind it, and usually you do that on the back of the work, and it's dated so that, there's a provenance of when it was created, right? And then, of course, today, now they use what they call a digital footprint, right?
Digital what?
A digital footprint.
Footprint.
Yeah. So let's say that I do a painting, okay,
Right.
and that back in, April of 2010, I posted it on Facebook, right? And then a company, let's say today, ends up picking up that image, without, knowing who made it, but they decide to use it in some kind of promotional advertising, or let's say a book publisher uses it for a book cover without my knowledge or my permission.
Right.
You see, now I have the right, if I hear of it, if I ever see it, right, or my family ever sees of it, then they have the right to go after that publisher, and they can prove copyright because I have the original piece of work, or maybe they hold it and it has a copyright mark on it on the back, and there's a date that it was published online.
Okay.
That was years before it ever showed up, on the book. And so you have a legitimate, litigation against this,
Right.
book publisher for, basically ripping off your work,
So when you say C, when I see a copyright date, usually the C has a circle around it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, a little circle with a C in it. Right.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
all that does is just, it says that, your intention is to claim your copyright on this piece of art for whatever use, you deem fit. Okay.
You told us about that maybe what, a year and a half ago, Charles, and everything I do, I do that now. I sign it with my name and the date and the little C in the circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything I do.
Yeah. Now,
Good or bad.
yeah, some people will, like sign their work on the front and put that little C on it. I tend to use, a graphic mark, on the front of the painting, but then on the back of the painting. And that's what I keep talking about. It's creating what we call provenance. It's like, where was this, who created this piece of work? Why was it created? Where was it created? When was it created? Okay. And you can put that all on the back, of your artwork. And it could be, I would recommend that you put it in something permanent that can't be erased or altered, such as marker.
Right.
And I use a Sharpie because a Sharpie won't bleed through the painting. I've tried other markers and not had such great success. I have a horror story about that. But the provenance is always on the back, and that copyright mark is always on the back. And so, the piece, if for whatever reason, my son or my grandchildren or something like wanted to contest the use of my art, for whatever purpose, and nobody had gotten, permission to use it, they could actually litigate against, that institution or company or whatever, to get what's due then, you know, because I just took that extra couple of minutes, you know, to sign it on the back, you know, create a provenance on the piece, you know, and you know, basically say, okay, yeah, I'm claiming copyright on this. I did this.
What happens now? That piece you showed us that woman had saved from your days as an illustrator, or what you want to call it, that you weren't even aware of was out there. What kind of status is that?
That was the Alaska piece, Charles.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I don't have any issue with her. She's not using it commercially. I was kind of surprised, I guess, that somehow, you know, it ended up, you know, out in the public because it was a corporation who basically paid, you know, for, well, it was American Express, you know, who paid for, you know, the creation of that work. Okay. Now, you know, now that in that particular case, you know, it might get, you know, it might get a little sticky, you know.
Yeah, what if she wanted to sell it to Alaska Airlines for their promotion?
Yeah, well, yeah. And see, then, you know, that would be a whole different case, you know. But, you know, basically, she bought it, you know, at a benefit sale, you know, for a community senior center, actually. And I guess at one point in time, you know, the corporation, you know, American Express, whoever, you know, whoever got, you know, the piece originally, and they held on to the artwork, you know, they decided to maybe frame it and put it in somebody's office. And I guess maybe when they retired, they took it with them. And, you know, I don't, you know, I got well paid to do those. I don't have any real complaint about, you know, what they did with the artwork afterward. You know, I wasn't that attached to it. But, you know, if it got resold for a different purpose, or, you know, some commercial company used it in their ads or something like that, yeah, you know, I might step in at that point and go, hey, yeah, you didn't create this work. You didn't, you know, you didn't get permission to use it, you know, for me, and I'm the creator of it. You know, what's up?
But how about ownership of?
Well, and see, that's kind of where it gets sticky.
Yeah.
You know? When I do a painting today, you know, and I sign it, you know, that's something that I created. You know, this was a project for a commercial company who commissioned these pieces to be done. You know, and there was a lot of different input, you know, so it wasn't my, you know, creative ideas or anything like that. You know, I basically just executed a piece of art, you know, to really suit their specific needs. And so, again, you know, they ended up holding on to the art, which was kind of unusual. But that's fine. You know, I mean, like I said, you know, I wasn't wrapped around the axle about it. And if they ended up, you know, giving it to, you know, their employees or something like that, you know, again, I don't really have a problem with it, you know. And, you know, the fact that this lady, you know, came across it, you know, and ended up buying the piece, okay, you know, that's fine. You know, in a way, I'm just kind of happy that it's not sitting, you know, in a closet somewhere, you know, in the dark, you know, and it's actually up on a wall and somebody's enjoying it. That's fine, you know.
So Charles, let me ask a question. So when you do commission work for a corporation, do you give up all rights of ownership to it? Is that part of the contract?
No. Now, there are companies like Disney, for example, okay,
Yeah.
that basically, if they hire you as a creative, they sort of take the stance that they own everything that you think of 24 hours a day, okay, no matter what it is.
At home or at work.
Yeah, which is absolutely ludicrous and crazy. you know, and people are fighting back against that as we speak, and should. Um, you know, but again, you know, that's kind of one of the problems with, you know, corporations and litigation. You know, they have a lot of lawyers, you know, and they have the ear of, you know, the Congress and the Senate, and there are a lot of, unfortunately, senators and things who don't really understand anything about this business who are listening to them and writing legislation in their favor.
And Disney is huge.
Yeah,
The bigger they are, the harder it is.
yeah, and Disney is just, you know, a small bit of it. But that's why, you know, and we'll go back to the beginning of this conversation. That's why this kind of needs to be revisited, you know, because there are a lot of creative people out there, you know, both, you know, people who make a lot of money, people who make no money, people who make a little bit of money, you know, who are adversely affected, you know, by these laws, and by these companies who, you know, they see an opportunity to make money off of something. And do you think that they're going to go, no, maybe that's not the most moral thing to do? No, you know, it's not even going to be a thought in their head. It's like, cha-ching, I see dollar signs, I can use that. I can put it on a T-shirt or something like that, you know, something else, and make a buck off of it, and you know, and they'll run.
So basically, if you show that intent to copyright somebody and you sell that painting, they still can't use your image for
No.
market to other people.
No.
Okay.
No, if you create a piece of artwork, you always own that work forever. Okay. Now you may not own the physical work, but you own any proceeds or any rights, you know, in marketing or distribution or anything like that. Yeah, that's clearly your creation. You know, the fact that they came along, possibly purchased that from you, that doesn't give them the right to put it on whatever they want or use it any way they want to.
Unless they pay for that.
Right, unless it's negotiated with you. Okay, you know, so the way that this is quote unquote supposed to work, and I know this is not where we intended to go today, is that, okay, so you create a piece of work, okay, it sits around your studio for a couple of years. Somebody walks in your studio one day, sees that, says, God, I love that, and I want to buy it from you. Okay, and you don't really know anything about this person. Okay, so they buy it, and they just happen to be a CFO or CEO or something of a large corporation. And in the back of their mind, when they saw it, it's like, well, I'm going to buy that and I'm going to use it for a promotion that we have. You see, they never talked to you about that. Okay, so you have every right to go after them, you know, financially, you know, for misuse of your work and breach of copyright. You know, you were the creator for that. Now, if they approached you the day that they bought it and said, hey, I'm buying this because I would really like my company to use this. You know, this would be a great, you know, thing to promote my, you know, my services or whatever. Totally different conversation, see? You know, then you can sit down with them and say, okay, so how are you going to use it? Is it going to be local, national, international? How's it going to get out there in the world? You know, what kind of products are you promoting? You know, because you know, depending on your philosophical view of the world, you may not want your piece of artwork used for maybe somebody who's making bombs and missiles, you know, out there, or some, you know, or an oil company or something like that. So, you know, but that's a conversation you need to have up front if they have any intention of using it that way. And so you can charge them accordingly if you're agreeable to it. Okay. And that's a big deal.
I have one more question. I lost power as you were talking, so I had to log back on. You were saying something about using the copyright symbol, the C with the circle around it. My question is, do you have to pay for every piece of artwork to be copyrighted before it's officially copyrighted, or just simply by putting that on there with your name and the date is enough?
Yeah. I think it was like 1978, the copyright laws changed. And it used to be where you had to file each and every, and it wasn't like a huge fee. I think it was like $3 and something, $3.50 or something like that to file a copyright on a specific piece. But with the change in the copyright laws, you no longer had to send anything into the Library of Congress, an image and things like that. And all you had to do was show intent. And that's by putting that C on there. So it cost you nothing, you know, because that was kind of the big to do about, you know, when they changed the law. The reason they changed it is there were so many creators who were making work that, you know, for somebody sitting at home doing a children's book like Rebecca, right? You know, if she had to spend that money before she even made any money to protect her work, you know, that could be a burdensome thing. You know, let's say that she had 1,000 images at $3.50 a piece. That's a lot of money for somebody, right? So anyway, the laws were changed. So, you know, basically the way it plays out now is you need to show intent, you know, to claim copyright. That's all you need to do. You don't actually have to do a filing. Now that's only, you know, that's only for visual artwork. Okay. Now books, things like that, they have a whole totally different set of rules.
Right.
Okay. And so, but again, you know, that's kind of where, with the society that we live in today, you know, having a digital footprint actually gives you provenance as far as when the work was created, who created it, you know, things like that. And that's why a lot of times, you know, it kind of seems silly, but, you know, I'll post a lot of work on Facebook. Why? I can go back years in the past and show exactly when that piece of work was made and when it was posted, and you know, and so that gives, you know, a court, you know, actual proof that, oh, okay, this image is, you know, this image was posted 10 years ago before this company used it. So no, this guy made it. Okay. So it's easy to track, you know, backtrack that. Well, not easy, but it can be done. Okay. And you can prove that. Okay. Same thing with same thing with computer files. You know, your original photos, things like that are unedited. You know, you can go back to the date that you took the photo of it, because there's a time stamp and date on all the images in your computer, right? Again, that's just another layer of proof for you. Okay.
I'm thinking about people like yourself, you know, real artists who are in the business of selling their art. When you do all of those little sketches or little, you know, studies before you make the real artwork, oh my God, that would be crazy. How do you document all that? I would lose my mind, because sometimes, you know, I've asked you before about your little, your studies. I think those are just as beautiful as the actual work that you do, you know, and you say sometimes you do sell those. So you document all of those?
Well, yeah. I mean, they get posted, things like that. Now, a lot of the little thumbnail sketches and stuff like that, I don't waste my time doing that. You can't technically, you can copyright a specific image. You can't copyright an idea.
Right.
Okay. And so, you know, thumbnail sketches and things, that's what those are. Those are ideas. Okay. You know, it's not a set composition. It could always change, you know, and probably will evolve, you know, from your original little, you know, scratchy thumbnail, you know, to the final piece. So what you end up copywriting is the final piece. usually.
But now in the video you showed us, I forget which one it was yesterday before, they had the two little basically sketches alongside the main picture.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, the studies.
that apply like in the copyright then?
You could. Yeah, you could. I mean, certainly, again, that's, those two small paintings, or however many he did, again, give, his estate, or him, if he's still alive, which he wasn't, but it gives his estate, provenance, the fact that he did the final piece, that he went through this process, he created it, because they're showing, the steps along the way of how it got created. See? And, I think I pointed out the other day, that museums in particular now, more and more of them are beginning to not only show the final pieces, but they're showing, a lot of the sketches and sketchbooks and things of artists, because they want the public to understand that, the guy didn't just walk up, start sticking his brush in some paint and throwing it up there, to make this piece of artwork. It was kind of an involved, thought out process. So, yeah.
This would be an interesting subject for a whole class,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it makes about things like collage artists. I've done a couple of collages, and I use United States postal stamps. So how can I claim that is mine when that artwork was originally created by someone else? So how would I put a copyright on that?
Okay. Well, you can put a copyright on the finished piece of artwork. Okay. Now, let's say that a company like the U.S. Postal Service uses that postal stamp that they created to, promote their services. Well, just because you have a postage stamp on your collage that matches the one that they're using, and you can't go after them for that, because
No, but they can come after me because I'm using their piece of art. See, that's what's so interesting to me, especially.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation, because then what you're doing is you're using a utilitarian item that you purchased, from the post office, that everybody else does. But what you're doing is you're using what we would consider a found object, to create a piece of artwork. So whether they could go after you for using that, I don't know, that's an interesting question. It's kind of like the guy in New York who his whole form of artwork, everything that he does is he basically does drawings of US currency, or I should say world currency, okay, because I think he does Canadian as well as US and stuff. But he would go in and sit down, in a restaurant in New York and order a meal and get a sketch pad out, and he would draw a dollar bill or $100 bill or whatever denomination he wanted. And at the end of the meal, he would hand that to the cashier.
No, he was asking to go to jail now, wasn't he?
No. You see,
What a sneaky thing to do.
well, no. But the thing is, I mean, he got fairly well known around New York. But the thing is, that drawing of that dollar bill was worth literally thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I can see that.
The actual value. So he was
Right.
giving them far more than what the meal cost. See?
He
And
was giving them an original copied piece of art.
He was giving them an original piece of artwork that had a high dollar value, because his work was pretty collectible. Well,
So the question is, did the cashier give him back change from the art? The person?
I don't think so. No. I don't think it worked that way. But the interesting fact is that this went on for a good number of years with him. And he exhibited, like in galleries and stuff like that, his artwork. And it eventually, I think it was the U.S. Department of Treasury went after him,
Yeah,
with a
yeah,
lawsuit,
I
and
bet so.
they were serious. I mean, they really wanted
Oh,
to put him
yeah.
in
They
jail.
had a case.
Yeah.
They had a case, a real case.
Well, actually, they didn't.
No?
Because he wasn't counterfeiting, which is what they were accusing him of.
Sounds like a counterfeit to me.
No, it wasn't, because I mean, he wasn't copying it exactly, and he wasn't really trying to pass it off as a real piece of money. It was a piece of artwork, and it was clearly, from the very beginning to the very end, this is a piece of artwork, right?
Okay. So he
And he
was
was,
bartering. He was bartering.
yeah, I was going to
for
say the
his
same thing,
Right. He
bartering.
was, yes, yeah, and that's really how the case ended up. The court ended up siding in his favor. The fact that they couldn't put him in jail because he really wasn't, violating any real laws, even though it kind of pissed him off. Uh, you know, but he was bartering his creative output, for goods and services. And of course, then the IRS got into it because they wanted to be able to tax him, and all that stuff too. It's like that's what I'm saying. Conversations like this tend to go down, like they start off in one direction, but then there's all these other entities out there that have their own agenda, and it just gets into a real can of worms. So anyway, hi everybody, happy
hi,
Wednesday.
Happy to you too.
Yeah, so everybody enjoy that conversation?
Yeah, that was very
Yeah.
interesting. Very interesting.
Like I
Sorry,
said, you do a whole
Bob Ross.
class.
Pardon?
Sorry,
I
I
see.
brought up Bob Ross.
Oh, no, no.
I mean, you can do a whole class on this because this is the kind of information that you don't, as a
Right.
person learning this
Yes.
skill, this craft, you don't know these things and you have
Yes.
no clue. And it's
Charles,
not
Charles is our voice of experience.
right. And there's, no matter how long you look at YouTube, which I'm an addictive YouTube person on art, you don't really find these things. I found some information close to this, but you don't know. You don't even know that you're supposed to know. So this is really interesting.
Right. Well, let me recommend a great source for you. Okay.
Okay.
Two great sources. And you might want to write these down. Okay.
I have pen in hand.
Yeah, there is a book published. I haven't seen one in years, but I haven't looked for it. It's called The Artist Market.
Artist Market.
Yes. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the title of the book. And they were publishing them every year. And what it basically did is it gave you all of the legal information about operating as a creative, contracts, copyright, marketing, how to contact galleries, museums, things like that. It was a great, reference book, in
And what was it called again?
The Artist Market.
Was it put out by the government?
No. It was an independent publisher that did it. They ran, I think it was like $19, $20, for the book. And it's like a small book, but it's like really thick, and literally, I mean, you could, and the thing is, when they publish this, they would like have copies of contracts that you could literally Xerox and copy out of the book, which was perfectly legal and fine. They wanted you to do that with all of the up-to-date information that would have to be in that contract, to make it legal. Okay. So it was a great resource. Okay. So there was that. The other resource is the Graphic Artists Guild.
The Graphic Artist Guild.
Yeah, Graphic Artists Guild. Okay. And you can find them online. I think they still exist out there. I'm pretty sure they do. And you can go on their website and download all kinds of information, PDFs, things like that. And again, you know, they have all of the updated information on, you know, making contracts for sale, copyright, you know, whatever you need. You know, they'll have a contract on there that you can download, and I think it's for free. You know, I don't think they charge you for that. You know, now you may end up, if you use their resources, you may end up having to join their organization, which is, you know, not much. You
The
know,
price of doing business.
yeah, but you know, if you want to keep up with these things, you know, those are two good resources that I know of, and I'm
I see
sure.
their latest, the last one it looked like they published was 2018,
Okay.
Artist Market in 2018. There's also one here, Rebecca, Children's Writers and Illustrators Market 2020.
Yeah.
Right. Yes,
Yeah.
that I'm familiar with that. Thank you.
Okay.
Wow,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, there are resources out there. You know, if you want to find this stuff out, and you know, it's not terribly expensive. You know, to go through one of those books will take you, you know, a good afternoon just to kind of thumb through it and kind of find out what's in it, and then you'll have to go back and, you know, it's not one of these books that you start at the cover and read all the way through. You read sections, you know, that's pertinent to whatever you're doing. But yeah, those would be the two resources I would recommend. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Good. Now, are we ready for class?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because, you know, we're going to start off. Yeah, we're already 40 minutes into this. I'm going to start off with a video, and I've got a bunch of stuff to look at. I don't know that we're going to get to all of it today. I'm going to start off with a video because somebody asked a really good question a couple of days ago, which is, okay, you know, art, where's it going? What's happening next? Okay. And so I found a brief video about that, and you know, it's an interesting conversation. And just take a listen to what this guy is saying, and we'll talk about it afterwards. So let's see. Yeah, here he is. All right. Everybody see this guy, you know, holding a crystal ball?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, just, you know, want to make sure we're all on the same page. And away we go.
What's coming next? In this video, we're going to do a quick refresh on the past, get some focus on the present, and even have a sneak peek at what we might be coming up in the future.
Can't hear him.
Yeah, I can't either.
Can't hear him.
You can't hear him?
No,
No,
right.
he's mumbling.
Oh.
And I'm the curator of Retromodernism. Now, whether you are a collector, a dealer, or simply
Better.
about art,
Better.
there's possibly a few questions that you ask yourself on a fairly regular basis. Where do we fit into the whole scheme of things, given that art history is 40,000 years old, especially the most recent part? Where are we actually today? And most important of all, where are we likely to be going in the near future? Now, I hope that we're going to be answering a few of these questions in today's video. And what I can certainly guarantee that you'll get from this video, and also videos in the future that we'll be posting, is a fresh take on classical and period art, certainly a compass to navigate the fairly tricky waters of contemporary art, and thirdly, and this is really the kicker, the opportunity to be a pioneer, to genuinely become part of what we hope is going to be a new chapter in art history, i.e. retromodernism. Now, if you have any questions or comments on what you've heard so far, drop them into the comments box below. If you already feel that what I'm saying is chiming with you and striking some kind of chord, just go for it, subscribe. It would be great to have you on board and with us for the journey. So let's rewind a little bit. And the first movement I want to talk about, and obviously we're not going to go into a lot of detail because these are huge movements. We will post videos in the future and we will deep dive into them. But let's talk about modernism. Now, modernism, there ain't that much modern about it. We are talking about a movement which effectively started I would say possibly 1873, Impression Sunrise is a painting by Claude Monet, which really set the tone and kicked the whole thing off. And then we're talking about 60 years of absolutely incredible development, incredible range. We're talking about artists who go from Renoir, Gauguin, Picasso, Duchamp, Dali, right the way up to Lucio Fontana and the Futurists. That's a lot of movements. That's Cubism, Fauvism, Expressionism, Surrealism, a whole bunch of things thrown in. And that's not even mentioning architecture. You've got the Bauhaus movement in there. You've got Le Corbusier. You've got Frank Lloyd Wright. If we look into literature, we can mention T.S. Eliot, Ezra Pound, Friedrich Nietzsche, Carl Jung, and Sigmund Freud are in there. And we're also talking about a period which covers, in terms of history, the emancipation of women, Emily Pankhurst. We're talking about the Industrial Revolution. We're talking about 2 world wars that are in there. This is big stuff, and stuff with social impact, which is reflected in the art. But what was modernism? It was kind of a rejection of everything that had gone before it, the canons of the Age of Enlightenment. It was a rebellion. It was a move towards free expression, although it still had some sort of control. Now, if we start to talk about postmodernism, which kicks in sort of slightly overlapping around about the time of World War II, that just takes the lid off the box. That is, it's a free-for-all. I mean, it's kind of, it's all art for all men, to be honest. We're talking about abstract, conceptual, pop art, performance, installation, video, digital, the whole gamut, no parameters. And of course, the artists that we're putting into there is everybody from Jackson Pollock through Andy Warhol to Jeff Koons, all under one label. Well, you could possibly come back to me and say, well, Jeff Koons, Andy Warhol, they're actually contemporary artists, and you'd be right. Now, this overlap, again, it creates a little bit of confusion, a little bit of, well, what it does create, first and foremost, is the opportunity, obviously, for academics and for critics to put forward their case, to show themselves that they have theory, and to debate where one thing starts, where another thing ends. It's great debate. It also affords a very active art market the possibility to hype and to create value. Let's say that, create value. In the meantime, since postmodernism kind of waned and this all-embracing contemporary art label emerged, there have been certainly some noteworthy contributions. I would certainly point to the young British artists, Damien Hirst, Tracy Emin, Jacob Venus Chapman, who gave a huge contribution. And thankfully, most recently, a lot of attention has begun to turn towards very, very deserving women artists, African-American artists, and artists from around the globe, all of which is long overdue. But at the same time, it feels as though there's still a space, still a narrative which is just begging to be told. And that, obviously, for us, is retromodernism. Now, given the huge impact that social and cultural events have had on art movements in the past, this is a moment of break. It's a moment of epoch-changing importance. And I'm talking, of course, about COVID-19. It's killing people. It's killing business. It is a total nightmare for so many people. But at the same time, the combination of that disruption together with the opportunities that are available thanks to internet, who knows? We feel, honestly, that retromodernism is a terrific narrative. It helps people to get into past art. It explains a lot of things about present art. And of course, it's a timeline which you can go up and down it and point to cases of retromodernism all the way up and down the line. Once again, if there's anything you'd like to know more about, post a comment, post a question, hit the subscribe button, get in touch and become part of this. That's really what we'd love to happen. Now, I can't actually shut this video down without just saying a huge, huge thanks to Sean Cannell, Think Media. Again, in the descriptions below, there'll be a link so you know what I'm talking about. But I just want to say, you guys have completely changed my perspective, my idea of how to do this that I'm doing now, just making a simple video, but how to go about it. And most of all, how.
All right, I'm going to stop him there because all he's doing at this point is promoting the platform that he's on. Okay.
What is his name, Charles?
Good question. What is his name? Down there, it's just called Retro Modernism. I don't think he ever gave his actual name.
I thought of the very first he did.
Well, let's go back and find out. This is the great thing about YouTube.
It is.
You can always rewind stuff.
Yep, I've done that before.
Yeah, it's like how many times are you going to watch this? Okay.
Yep.
Let's see if he says.
If you love art and art history, you may well have asked yourself, well, what's coming next? In this video, we're going to do a quick refresh on the past, get some focus on the present, and even have a sneak peek at what might be coming up in the future. Stay tuned. Hi, my name is Angus MacDonald, welcoming
Okay.
you. And I'm
Angus MacDonald.
Angus MacDonald. Okay. All right.
Thanks.
We did
I
get
wonder
it.
if he has Scottish heritage.
Pardon?
Nothing, just making the wisecrack.
Oh. Well, we got to have one or two of those. Come on now.
Charles, wasn't he mimicking a famous painting of an artist that liked to hold the globe, the glass globe?
You mean
Just-
you mean MC Escher?
yes, that's where I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, you could kind of refer it to some of the Escher prints that use that that I guess you would call it a crystal ball. Yeah, but personally, I think he was kind of using it for kind of like, okay, let's look into the future.
I see.
Yeah, but you can interpret it any way you want to. See? Again, that's the fun thing about art. You see something and wow, okay, it takes you, a totally different direction. Okay.
So what was this under? The colorist movement is what that was?
No. This is.
I thought that was the search for the YouTube.
Well, I did a search for colorist movement, but I came across him
Okay.
and wanted to share that with you because the question came up the other day.
So Charles, just to reiterate, we are in the period called retro modernism right now. Is that correct?
I wouldn't buy that. No.
Oh, no?
No. That is.
I think that was under the comments section for him.
That's something that's being promoted. Okay. As a possible description of where we are now. Okay. That by no means has been adopted. And, like we were saying the other day, none of us will ever know what this is called because that will be decided 50 to 100 years from now when we're not here anymore. People,
grandchildren or great grandchildren.
right. Yeah. Just like the modernist art movement, it didn't get called the modernist art movement, when Duchamp, did his thing. He was doing something else.
I thought it was good though. He put everything. I mean, he was talking about architecture and movements that were going on throughout the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you see, and we've talked about this many times. As a visual artist, if all we're talking about is visual art, none of us operate in a bubble. Okay. We're not cut off from the rest of the world. We watch media. Okay. We take walks in our neighborhood. We drive downtown. So we see the world, as it is today, we're experiencing it. And that includes, architecture, fashion, music, books, magazines, television, radio, it's huge. Okay. and it's all an influence on you and me as a creator, in making decisions about what we're saying, what kind of conversation we're going to have, and the direction that we're going to go in, with it. Including, I think Lady was pointing out, she's a big YouTube fan, right? The content that she watches is going to influence her, in one way. It's going to inform her in one direction or another, as to what the issues are and what she thinks about them. And so, like I said, none of us just kind of operate, in a total vacuum. It's always, we're reacting to our environment around us, and having some kind of reaction to that. Okay.
Charles, I was surprised that he didn't mention the big field of digital art now.
Oh, well, I mean, he probably left out a couple hundred.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can't cover them all. There's so many. I mean,
Right.
literally. And, and even today, there's little pockets of people kind of operating, and, they're calling, their work this. Okay. They can label it that for now because they got to call it something. That doesn't mean that's what it's going to end up. And whether it stays separate all into itself, or whether that gets vacuumed into a bigger, bigger viewpoint by academics and people who are writing history books, they have like no control of that.
Like the Hudson River Group could be called something else in 100 years.
Right. Well, I mean, they're pretty much so stuck, I mean, that's probably, yeah, the Hudson River School is probably not going to change, but did they, the question is, did they label themselves the Hudson River School? And I don't think they did. I think that was the name that came along later on.
Oh, okay. I was thinking they named themselves that.
I don't think so. Yeah. I think in a rare case, like the Impressionists, took that name, but they didn't take that name until probably about 15 years into the movement. And that was an adoption from a newspaper article, where somebody had, one of the critics had written that, what these paintings are their impression of, and that's how they got the word or the term impressionist.
Charles, I had a 5-year-old kindergarten tell me, Mrs. Pinckney, do you know why the Impressionists call themselves Impressionists? It's because they were trying to make a good impression on you.
I love 5-year-olds.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. Anyway, all right. So I think you got the gist of this conversation, which is, art history. We have no control over it. You can just make your stuff and do your thing, and somebody later on will come along and find a neat little category to put you in. Okay. In the meantime, have fun. Do what you're doing. Okay. And speaking of doing what you're doing, okay, so we're going to jump into the conversation that I wanted to have today, which was, at one point in time, we were talking about the, basic tools of an artist, and, visual artists being painters. Okay. So we're not talking about drawing or any printmaking, anything else. It's just, painting, that this relates to. Okay. And so, you have 5 types of contrast, right? Okay. So you got value. Everybody knows that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have the actual color, or what we call hue, H-U-E, right? And there's only 6, color families, right? Red, yellow, blue, green, violet, and orange, right? That's it. And then you have this thing called intensity or chroma. They mean the same thing, right? So it's the purity of the color, right? How pure is the color? The more pure you make it, the more intense and bright, the painting is going to be, right? So, if you get 6 tubes of those 6 primary, secondary colors, and you never mix any of them together and you just put them on the canvas, you're going to have a very intense painting, aren't you? Okay. But as soon as you start mixing them, or even adding white or black to them, what you're doing is you're lowering the chroma or the intensity. Okay. You can never make something more intense, by adding anything to it. You're always going to lower it. Okay. So after intensity, then we have this tricky thing, which is really difficult and hard for people to grasp, which is called temperature. Okay. And again, the conversation goes back to when you look at a palette, or a color wheel, you could, in theory, divide, that color wheel in half. And half the colors are what you could call warm, and half of the colors are, you could consider to be cool. But the fact is, when you actually get into doing a painting, you can't rely on that, okay? Because the fact is, it's always a conversation of one color next to another, and the relationship between the two of them. One is going to be warmer, one is going to be cooler, one might be more intense, one might be more muted, okay? And so it's always a comparison, in those conversations. So you can't universally say that all yellows are warm. It depends. When you take a like a yellow green, right, which is a yellow, right, but it's a little to the green side, and then you take a red orange and you compare the two, which is warmer?
Red, orange.
Yeah, well, more than likely it is. It depends. Is it a full chroma red orange, or is it something that's been modified and muted down? If it's muted and grayed down, it could get to the point where it's actually cooler than the yellow green. Okay. So again, it's all comparison. You can't universally say, this is warm, this is cool. Okay. And that's something I want to emphasize to all of you, because as soon as you grasp that, okay, then you start looking at paintings and color in a totally different way. And I think the reason that stacks up, in importance and to like the fourth, most important thing, is because it is such a difficult concept to grasp, and as you mature as an artist, it's like you usually start off, with everybody knows what the 6, primary, secondary colors are, that's kind of kindergarten, first grade, but you're usually an adult by the time that you begin to understand this thing called value, and the colors have value, light and dark, and then after that, this intensity thing, again, you're an adult before you really grasp that, and get sophisticated enough with using color that you can begin to modify color, and get colors to react and work together. And then somewhere along the line, this temperature thing, most people don't really get it until they've been painting for a really long time. Usually about 15 or 20 years before they really, get a good handle on it and really grasp it and can actually use it, in an effective way. And then the last thing, and it's probably the most subtle thing, is hard and soft edges, right? You know, what do, you know, when and how do I use a sharp, crisp line, and when is it to my advantage to make it softer, you know, make it a little bit blurry. And again, you know, it's like by the time you've been doing this for a while, you start paying attention to that stuff. You know, before that, it's just you're putting down a paint stroke. You don't ever think about, you know, the four edges that a paint stroke makes and how you might want to make, you know, one or two of those. You might want to modify them, you know, so that they have a different effect. And so, you know, it's this growing process of becoming, you know, more and more mature.
Charles, I have a question.
Mhm.
I'm sure there must have been a whole very long history back to the cave drawings as to, you know, and use of color there, how these 5 different contrasts have developed over, you know, 80,000 years.
Well, the fact is, we can't really know anything or very much about that. Okay. Basically, you have about 2,000 years of artwork that we can look at that's surviving, that still has color. Okay. When you look at ancient cave paintings and things like that, you know, for the most part, they were really limited in the pigments that they had. So they generally used earth tone pigments because that was what was readily available to them. If they used, you know, like vegetable based colors, like berries and things like that, and you know, they could have, we don't know. But, you know, because of the organic nature of those pigments, they disappeared long ago. You know, they're fugitive. They're not going to last forever.
But I'm just saying that the whole history of the 5 different types of contrast had to have developed across all of this time since humans have been creating.
Yeah, it really kind of came around more around about the Renaissance.
Oh, okay.
Because at that point in time, then you had, you know, color and a wide range of color that we know of to actually use. Now, color existed before then, you know, but again, you know, it goes back around about 3,000 years to China, you know, with watercolor and water-based pigments. And so China, India, you know, things like that. But if you look at the style of art that was done up until the Renaissance, it was generally kind of graphic, kind of flat, simplified shapes. You know, there wasn't a lot of modeling and things. It was, you know, generally patterns and flat colors. You know, even in Egypt, you know, they didn't do a lot of rendering and modeling, you know, on a face. You know, when they were painting a wall, it was, you know, pretty much a continuous skin tone, and that was the skin, and then, you know, whatever they were wearing and things. Again, kind of flat graphic color.
Yeah, lines and then filling in the lines.
Right. Yeah, kind of a, you know, you could call it a cartoon. Okay.
Well, the pigments themselves, though, they all came from nature. So you were limited from nature what kind of hue you would have. You couldn't come up with a pinky rose unless you had a source that would, when you crushed it and mixed it, you would get that color.
Right. Well, now, you know, when the Chinese made watercolor like 3,000 years ago, and I think there are some still existing watercolors from maybe that far back, maybe not. You know, again, you know, we can't really tell because they could have used other colors that we can't see now because they've basically deteriorated because they were an organic based, like a plant based pigment. you know, so we don't really have any way of knowing. And really, you know, if you just look at archaeological evidence, you know, if you go back, you know, really about the time of Egypt, or maybe, you know, in like Central and South Asia and China, you can maybe go back 2,000 years and still get evidence of a range of color other than earth tones. Okay. You know, because Egypt, you know, you still see blues, reds, oranges, yellows, and things in the pigments. And, you know, they're still preserved, but that's because of where they were. If you look at a lot of the monuments that were outside, right, exposed to the weather, all of that's gone. You know, same thing with like the Greek temples, things like that, and their statues. When you look at a Greek statue today, what you see is you see white marble, but they were not white marble. They were painted bright, really vivid colors.
And you can still see some of that over at the Emory Museum, the Carlos Museum, where
Yeah.
there's traces of painting on the Greek statues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that was common in Greece and in Rome as well. And really all throughout the ancient world. You know, they used
Exterior of the buildings, the same thing. There were a lot of painting on the exterior of the buildings at that time too.
right. Yeah. When you think of the Acropolis, you know, I mean, you kind of think of a white marble building, but it wasn't. You know, I mean, there was yellows and reds and golds and all kinds of color, you know, over the marble, and over time, all that pigment has gone away. So, anyway. So, where was I going to go with that? Okay, yeah. So we're going to look at a painter in particular, and the reason I wanted to look at him is that he's an interesting character. He's an American painter. His name is Charles William Hawthorne. Okay, and we're going to look at a little of his work, and I'm going to, you know, he influenced a lot of American artists. And in fact, there was, you know, a couple of art schools in America that, yeah, Charles Webster Hawthorne.
Webster.
Hawthorne.
Okay.
Yes, I messed that up. Bad me. Okay. Can everybody see a lady sitting kind of in a rocking chair?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. So when we look at this, when do you think that this painting was probably done? Just looking at what she's wearing, the interior, things like that. If you had to make a guess.
Yeah.
Around the turn of last century.
Yeah. 1890, 1920.
Okay. Yeah, and you'd be just about right. Okay. Probably a little later. You know, probably in the 1900s. You know, late 1800s, early 1900s. But look at the style of the painting. If you had to describe that, how would you describe it?
Realistic.
Yeah, it's representational. It's realism of a sort. Okay. What does it remind you of? You know, what other artist does this remind you of? You know, does it remind you of like Degas? Does it remind you of Monet? Does it remind you of any of the Impressionists or?
Yeah, it does to me.
Yeah. Yeah, he, you know, he definitely had a lot of influence from the Impressionist movement, and he could be considered, I guess, a American Impressionist. But in looking at a lot of his paintings, I would kind of make him more of a post-Impressionist, because if you begin to look at a lot of his artwork, you know, there's a strong influence of drawing, you know, outline, kind of like Van Gogh's and a lot of the post-Impressionists. and a more modernist feel to his work than a lot of impressionists like, say, for example, John Singer Sargent, right?
Mm.
So, you know, the painting itself becomes maybe a little flatter, a little more decorative, right? And the thing is, and the thing I like about Hawthorne in particular is his use of color. You know, because he has a very kind of what I would consider a modernist sensibility about the use of color, and very good at managing color. Um, like for example, if you look at this, what do you think is the strongest, most intense color on this painting? Anybody?
Green tablecloth.
The green, yeah, the green on the tablecloth,
Hmm. Okay. All right.
or the red on the vase.
Well, I would say that the reds are fairly subdued, you know, but yeah, the green, you've got a little bit of yellow here. It's pretty intense. Some of the turquoise, again, is pretty intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Even some of the yellow, you know, in the chair itself, it's slightly, you know, modified and grayed down. Okay. Um, but, you know, he's played these little touches of fairly intense color against what? You know, against a
Right.
lot of other colors that have been muted, you know, and intentionally, you know, desaturated, like the gray wall, which is not gray.
Blue.
Well, it's a lot of things. It's yellow, it's blue, it's orange, it's purple, it's everything.
Mhm.
See, there's all kinds of color in there. You know, it's not just one flat, you know, monotonous color. And it changes both color,
Mhm.
temperature, and value in that area.
Mhm.
So, you know, the other thing that's kind of interesting about,
Mhm.
okay, somebody's phone's ringing, about this particular painting is that, you know, he used elements of line, right, to outline, you know, some of the background images, which make them kind of flat and kind of graphic. And then in other places, okay, I guess I'm still here. Okay. It's telling me my internet connection is unstable. Um, anyway, he's using outlines, but he's using them in colors as well. You know, like the outside of the chair is in kind of this yellow ochre color. So they're actually softer than some of the things in the background. And so, in a way, he's intentionally sort of flattening out the space and making it a more modernist looking painting rather than trying to convey real three-dimensional depth in the painting. Okay. If you look at the skin tones again, you know, there's a slight gradation, you know, indicating where the light is coming from, which is from the right, and the shadow is to the left. But again, there's not a huge contrast value. And if you really look at, you know, how he treated the face, it's a very sort of simple kind of outlined lineal drawing over,
Oh,
you know, over the base color. Okay. So you just added in, you know, just a few lines here, you know, for the brows, the outline of the top of the eye, you know, the plane, side plane of the nose and the face, and just a little bit along, you know, the outside of the face, you know, to sort of indicate, you know, this is a human face. If he took those lines away, you know, there's not a lot of value structure there. It's very, you know, it's very close together. It would fall into almost, you know, like two values. Um,
That's very much soft edges, would you say?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Used a lot of soft edges, not you know, not real crisp, not real hard on much of anything really. And this is another example. Okay, and I think this is one of his,
No. Stop that.
I think it kind of falls into the category of one of his earlier works. And he's still, he's painting in kind of a very impressionistic, approach here. But he's beginning to develop and he's beginning to kind of hit on where he would end up at. And what he was really looking at is the effect of light and how light in the painting is blocked into, big masses of either light, mid-tone, or dark. And, if you will, look at the figure, right, in the light and look at the range of color and value here, and then compare that to the range of color or value in shadow, right? And if you squint your eye down, basically it falls into, like two shapes, one lit, one in shadow. And there's just a tiny little bit of midtone, right here on this arm. Everything else is either to the light side or to the shadow side. Here's another painting of his, okay? And again, see, he's beginning to simplify, and again, if you squint your eye down, look at where the dark shapes are, where the mid-tone shapes are, and the lights are. See, forget about the color, and just look at the value structure. And, very much so, he's looking at constructing his paintings where the highest degree of contrast in value, as well as temperature and intensity, are at his focal point. See? And he does it, really, really nicely here, with, the fisherman in the yellow hat against, this dark, shadow side of the boat. And then, of course, the contrast between the very warm yellow here and the blue surrounding it.
Mhm.
See? Here's a landscape. Now, this is a pastel. Actually, I don't think this is his. No. This is though. Okay. Now, this is one of his later works. Okay. Now, when you look at the first work and you look at this work, what's changed?
Softening of the features,
Well, how about-
softer edges, still intense colors.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's flattening the space even more and increasing the range of contrast, very strong darks, very strong lights, and also using, very intense color and very highly saturated color against things that are, more muted and modified, down to be, very tonal. So when you squint your eye down, the thing that works here are these big kind of blocky shapes. Okay? And they create interesting movement and composition. And seriously, I mean, this is like right on the verge of being totally abstract. Okay.
When
Now,
did he do this?
this would probably be around about 1900, somewhere
Wow.
around.
And so how was that accepted?
It was fairly well accepted, at that point, because remember, you had, well, you had people like, well, in Europe, you had Duchamp, you had Picasso, and a lot of the, abstract movement beginning. So,
Okay.
so this was still fairly conservative in comparison to what was going on in Europe at the time. So, but he, as I said, he influenced quite a few groups of artists, particularly in the Northeast and the coastal areas of the United States. And a lot of people kind of looked to him, as a source of, influence and inspiration. And, when you go through Connecticut and, Maine, areas like that, Hawthorne was one of those people that a lot of people followed very closely. Now, he developed this idea, again, based on the lighting of what he called mudheads. Okay.
You
And
called it what?
mudheads.
That's what I thought you said.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what that meant was you have a particular lighting situation where the figure is backlit. Okay. And what happens, is, a lot of artists try to paint, the features of the face, and they totally get the range of value wrong because they're trying to put in, too great of a range of value that's not there, because the the skin tones in many ways are just silhouetted and a dark value. We saw that a little bit up here, Now, again, this is one of his earlier works, and see, he tried to go back in and put a lot of kind of intermediate, values. And if you squint your eye down, there's little places where, things begin to get probably a little too light, because they're getting close to mid-tone values. And you're not going to necessarily find mid-tone values on the shadow side or something. All these values.
Plus, there's some reflection.
Well, even reflected light, if it's falling on the shadow side, cannot be a mid-tone or a light. It can't. It's got to be within that range of value. And so that's actually probably a little more accurate, as far as what really goes on, with the lighting. Okay. Now, could you take the time to render a face there? You could, but you would, again, you'd have to keep it in those value ranges to make it actually accurate. He was pretty good, pretty good plein air painter. Did a lot of life painting. In fact, I think everything he did was pretty much open life. And if you look at the brushwork, how kind of loose and free it is, you could learn a lot. Here's a fairly standard, straightforward portrait. Okay, and look at the color. Look at the color in the face. We've talked about this before. Okay, definitely a warm, cool influence, right? Can anybody see that?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So the shadows are not all consistent, There are kind of these olive greens, which are cooler in comparison to, this pink of the cheek, right? Of course, you have cooler values than that, or cooler mixtures than that, with this, blue-green, on the side of the face, on the side plane of the nose. Again, going back to that slightly warmer, olive green. Still, though, on the shadow side, if you squint your eye down, it begins to hold together as, very clearly what's in shadow, what's in mid-tone, what's in light. And then when he gets back here to, the neck and the cast shadow on the neck, again, because the light is hitting the skin tone, reflecting back up, it doesn't look as cool. See, it's warmer. So this is actually warmer than this. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's this play, back and forth of warm and cool, as well as what's intense, what's muted, what's, in light, what's in shadow. So, taking a little bit of time, looking at different artists and how they approach, trying to resolve, common issues. If you do a painting of a person or something, you're going to have the same issues. but kind of learning what they did and then looking for that actually on the live model, or whoever you're painting, even from a photograph. You can see some, even though it's limited, you can see some shifts in color and temperature. The problem with using photography is that, photography, it just doesn't have the range and the sensitivity to pick up a lot of these subtle shifts that your eye can, because your eye can actually see literally 10 times the amount of color that camera can see. And that's with the best digital camera out there today. Your eye is still far more sensitive than that. So again, this is kind of another example of, what they refer to as mudhead. And so again, there's just really faint, subtle indications of any kind of features or thing, on this, because you really didn't see a lot there. The major impression, when looking at a live model like that was that, okay, that figure, I'm looking at the shadow side, and all of those values have to hold together, to remain within that shadow. And he was very good at that.
Charles, that reminds me of something that you would see in modern days, the lady in the yellow hat, the yellow blouse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now here again, this is, I think, one of his more finished paintings. A little bit later on, maybe than the first one that we looked at. But again, look at how he's using color. Look at how he's using value. Look at the design of the painting. And Rebecca, I'll call you out on this one. You see any horizontal lines moving all the way across the composition?
No, sir.
No, you do not. Okay. You see, big simplified shapes, right? He's got like a big rectangle here, right? But it's broken by this big, massive shape of white, right? Moving diagonally, right? And then to the table, it's moving back across to this figure that's moving up in front of this chair that's a curve. And then you get this, flat wall that's parallel to us. But again, he breaks into it. He opens it up and takes your eye further back, into the background. So
I think I'll take a picture of that.
okay, you could do that.
Just as a reminder.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. So Charles, I've tried several times to be consistent in taking a, what do you call it, screenshot,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't been successful. But
Oh.
somebody's going to come to the house this weekend and teach me.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's like different computers. I mean, generally they kind of work the same, but there's a big difference between a Mac and a PC base.
Yeah, mine's a Dell.
Yeah. My computer that the county gave me to work with is a Dell, and trying to get a screen capture off that thing is, it's a nightmare. So.
Well, yeah, and then sometimes I'll close it down and I'll find that a screenshot has been taken and I don't remember doing it.
Right. Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Now this is a tiny little postage stamp size image, which is unfortunate. Again, because it kind of illustrates, really kind of what I'm thinking about. If you will, indulge me for a moment. I want you to close your eyes and just keep them shut for about a minute. And then I want you to slowly open your eyes up, and I want you to tell me, where does your eye go to first?
Mine are the shoulders, neck area, right?
Yeah, really kind of the silhouette of the skin tones, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody have any other place that they ended up at?
I saw the green behind her.
Okay. If there's two, there's 11 of you. Come on. Anybody got any thoughts about that? Where'd you end up at? Is everybody taking a siesta?
I guess just Rebecca and I with you.
I say the dress.
Okay, what part of the dress did you see?
The lower part, and then my eyes traveled up
Oh, did they? Okay.
to the sleeves. Yeah, or the sleeves down. But
Yeah.
the sleeves have the blue.
Right.
And then, I saw that first, and then I moved down to the bottom.
Okay. Yeah. See, I'm kind of with you. I kind of saw the blue sleeves first, and then I moved up, though.
Oh, okay.
I definitely saw the blue sleeves first.
Mm-hmm.
It may be that blue and the green, those are some of my favorite colors, but I mean, you notice the light, where he's putting the light, but it was the blue I saw first. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I saw the skirt with the blue in it and then went up to the sleeves.
Okay. All right. So you're saying the lower part of the dress?
Yeah, you're right
And then
there,
went up.
but very quickly moved up to the sleeves.
Okay. All right. And there's a few more of you out there. Come on. Anybody else? Lady, what you got to say? Are you still with us? Let's see. Jenny?
Not.
Okay. Let's see. Azam, Elsie, what you got to say for you? Bob, you're quiet.
I'm very quiet. That's me.
Yeah. And even Bernice is here. Okay. So again, just close your eyes, just hold them shut for a moment, a minute, and then slowly open them. Tell me where your eye goes.
Mine goes to the blue
Okay.
inner sleeves.
Yeah. Anybody else? Azam, what do you think?
Everybody's taking a break.
Yeah, I think everybody's off getting peanut butter sandwich or something personally.
Something.
My eyes go to the blue and then up the curtains,
Okay.
the edge of the curtains.
Yeah, up, following the lines upward. Okay. All right. Lady, how about you? I've asked her before. I don't know, maybe did she leave us? I don't know.
Go on.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you kind of get the point, when you open your eyes, your eye ends up going to, some part of the painting and then kind of moving. For me, it was the blue sleeves, and that led me, up to, the area of, the actual skin tones. And again, if you squint your eye down, all right, what you've got is you've got this dark silhouette of the figure against a very, very, illuminated light background, surrounding her. So you have, an extreme value contrast, in this area. But you also have these intense, really intense colors. The blue probably being the strongest and most intense color in there, other than, well, yeah, it's really the blue. You get some oranges and things in here that are pretty bright, okay? But it's really the blue, and it's this very cool temperature against, these warm kind of gold yellows and things in the background. And so, very intentionally, he just kind of pulls your eye, right to where he wants you to look. And then you kind of move around in this area. Now, he's got reds and greens and things back here in the curtains, reddish colors in the floor, bluish colors in the table. But notice how none of these compete with anything over here.
Because of the higher contrast.
Well, the higher contrast, okay, but he's also, very conscientiously, brought down the intensity and the temperature changes of his grate, and so he's modified the color, out here to play kind of a secondary role. It's there. It tells you what it is that he's seeing, but he's made it a secondary thing, rather than the focal point. The focal point is here.
Yeah.
So
That's still very soft, not defined face and shoulders.
yeah, it's just it's a
very
suggestion.
simple.
Yeah, it's that idea of making a suggestion of something rather than detailing it. Making it so defined that it cuts off the conversation, with the viewer. Same thing here.
Wow.
The immediate impact is the dark against the light.
Now, I like this better than all the other ones.
You mean you like this particular painting? Or?
I like this painting best.
This is Naomi's style.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Naomi, I don't see how you could possibly relate to this painting. This is nothing like what you would do, right? Not. No.
Well, it's much softer.
Well, it is. It's soft.
Is.
It is soft, and his brushwork and things is a little more organized and controlled than yours. But the fact is, the way he uses color, and the fact that he simplifies, shapes.
That's what I like. That's what I don't like when it's the curtains and the window. I like it simplified. That's exactly it. More dramatic.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly about as dramatic as you could get, other than, say, the one that we looked at earlier, which was here. And I could see you liking that one too, But I like both of them. I mean, in fact, I like all of his work.
Yeah, it's very amazing.
Yeah, you can learn, just lots of stuff, by looking into stuff. Now here's a fairly academic, conventional painting of his, and I think this is one of his earlier pieces. And if you look at it, it looks, kind of what you would expect, from the time.
But it's again more flat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's still you can see early on in his work, that he's looking at a lot of different approaches to painting, and he's borrowing, from them, and it's certainly more of a modernist feel than, say, like Degas or Monet's. He's a little further down the line, and it's like the post-impressionist stuff. They're beginning to kind of flatten out, those forms. Here's another kind of example of that.
In the last one, he didn't use much contrast between the hair and the background. It's like they were both dark, and that's what bothered me about that one.
Oh, okay. Do you see, and I don't know whether you can see it on your computer or not, but do you see the shift in temperature?
Yeah, there's this kind of a blue to the background, whereas the hair is warmer browns.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Very similar values. So you lose the overall shape, but you have that change in temperature there to define those two shapes away from each other. So again, it's there, but
it still bothers me.
you don't like losing the hair into the background?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's what we call, found and lost edges. So, which is something, again, that as a more mature painter, you begin to look at, and it's like, what edges do you have to keep? Which edges can you lose? Here's another painting. Now remember, and I've said this many times, flesh tones can be anything. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, I see green, I see pink, I see yellow, I see gray, maybe a kind of a blue-gray, lots and lots of different.
Yeah, I would say almost purple in here, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, purple to green. And then, you know, you do have kind of a orangey sort of pink and a yellow and a more reddish colored orange. So there's all kind of color in there, right? But then you squint your eye down and it really falls into really two blocks, you know, of light and shadow. Yeah. So again,
Charles, I have a question because he looks like he outlined the front of the figure with a light green.
well, I don't know
See
that
that?
I don't know that he outlined it. But when I mean, you know, he probably laid this area in very loosely and
Mm-hmm.
didn't really have an outline of the face. And then he put the warm on there, and then he wanted to define it. So he mixed up a green for the background and
Yeah.
came along, you know, to cut into, and you can tell it was wet paint. And you can tell that there were warmer colors and things in there.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he drug right through it and it picked up in the green, you know, as he made that paint stroke all the way down, you know, really.
To the bottom.
Yes. He
Charles, his strokes at that area are completely different than going out just a little.
Yeah.
His strokes are up and down
right
at that point, and you go out a little, and his strokes
go
are
horizontal.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, they change direction.
Yes, I do that,
yeah.
and I don't like it. I try to avoid it.
Okay.
But evidently, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're in good stead.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah. Well, it's what I call making a halo, you know, and you do, you know, when you do that, you move down the form of the face. Generally, what most painters do is they come back, you know, with their horizontal strokes, and they'll come up to the edge of the face and they'll pull, you know, this direction. You know, after they lay that down, so that, you know, you don't get this halo effect. Now, why he left that in place, I don't really know. But in a way, it kind of isolates the head, you know,
It
from the
does.
background. And
It almost looks like the face was further over to the left
well,
at one time. And he pushed it back.
Yeah, well, you could actually tell that the width of the brush, and he was using sort of a flat, you know, going down the side of the face, so that the brush stroke, you know, kind of mirrors, you know, the outline of the face there, because that's the width of the brush.
Yeah, that really popped for me when I looked at the head and I went, wow, was that a larger area he was doing, or what, you know, what was he thinking?
Yeah.
Also, the head has the grayish, purplish color up around it.
Yeah, back there on the back side. Right.
Well, up on the top too.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a little bit of violet right there, again, to make sort of this change in plane from the top plane to the side plane of the hair.
Yeah.
I've taken to doing a halo effect around portraits. You know, some more spread out than others, you know.
Yeah, can you say that again? Because you were kind of breaking up, Jenny.
Oh, okay. I tend to do a halo effect around portraits now. And I find that it, you know, helps divide it from the background a little and emphasize the person.
Okay.
So I've done that on a few of mine now.
And you like that, and you do that intentionally.
I do, but my halos aren't the same color, such close color to the face.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're more
contrast.
distinguishable. Yeah, they're more distinguishable, and they kind of, you know, go into one of mine goes more into the background color, but lighter. It's lighter than the background color.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I do a little halo effect. I've been experimenting with that, and I do like it, but not like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, mine looks substantially different.
Maybe you can send one in and we'll take a look at it.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Yeah, if you've got an example of that.
I have.
While she's getting that, Charles, I noticed that the
Oh.
halo effect is on the back of the child's head too.
Yeah, it goes.
Yep.
It really kind of works both front and back, where he kind of defined the shape. You know, with that.
If anybody can see
Yeah.
me.
Well, here's
Yep.
what we'll do. I'll just stop sharing for a moment. Okay, so Jenny, if you want to hold that up and just talk.
Okay. I'm trying to get it to where.
That's it. Hold it right there, Jenny.
Yep, you're good. Yeah, now just talk to us.
This is my great aunt Olive. About a 1930s photograph is what I based this off of. But I've kind of given her a light blue aura.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And this one, I've made the aura bigger and kind of lighter tones of the background color.
Yeah. I have to tell you, the second one, you know, the one you're holding right now, I like the effect of that better because it's softer and it really becomes part of the background. Yeah, more than the first. Because I think that the color you put around the face related to the background more.
And then, you know, I've got this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of the same thing. It's
There.
you know, the thing that you know, it's like I would like to I like the color you have. I would like to see it transition back into the background a little more softly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it when you first look at the painting, and I'm just talking for me, you know, it's a little distracting. You know, because you go to sort of the outline around the head, and so you know that's something that, again, you know, and this is personal preference. You know, I'd like to read kind of as a secondary. Yeah, and see
I
here.
like the way it turned out.
Right. Yeah, and
It's
it's
the
just
third
taking
one I
it.
did for
Yeah, it's just taking it, softening it. You know, it can be there. You know, the change in color, right?
I have one too,
Yeah.
but she was backlit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I thought the way it came out, that, you know, it really framed her head.
Yeah. And you know, finding a lighter value or a different color, you know, around is fine. In this particular case, in Hawthorne's case, the one that we're looking at, you know, it seems as though he could have, you know, taken the paint and broken this edge up right in here, so that it didn't mirror the outline of the face quite so much, and it would have still held the line, but it would have been less distracting, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
And then we have this lovely, you know, one of my favorite subjects, you know, the human figure. And again, look at the shift in color and temperature and value. See, again, if you squint down, you know, is there like a real high degree of contrast? No. not on the figure itself. Now, the figure to the background, absolutely. But, you know, within the figure, the value range is not that wide. But it's wide enough that you clearly, distinctly see, you know, shadows and light, and really lovely effect, you know, for this very kind of loose, sketchy painting. So, we're going to move ahead a little bit here. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so, you know, again, almost like a post-impressionist feel to this painting. But again, look at his use of value and color, and how, you know, he puts this little bit of red in here. So you really kind of just, you know, pull your eye right up to here, and then you kind of move around the umbrella and back down really nicely. Here's water, and notice again, see, no detail, you know, on the faces, things like that. You know, here in the foreground, he gives you a little bit of detail on the hand itself. Other than that, you know, everything else is, again, just a very simplified suggestion that something is there. One of the things, you know, in looking at his watercolors, you know, which were like life studies, things like that, look at the brushwork, you know, how loose. You know?
Very wet, wet on wet.
Yeah, very wet, very kind of loose, you know, but very bold in color too. You know, making, you know, really, really strong color statements. You know, he's not sneaking up on this, you know, in any way. You know, it's not like, well, you know, maybe I'll put a little orange there. No, it's just a big, you know, big paint stroke of orange, big paint stroke of red, and then, you know, these blue violets around it, and then, you know, come back in with those darker, you know, trees. You know, done deal. Here's another one of those, you know, kind of mud heads. And again, squint your eye, you know, and, you know, again, look at the play of light shadow, you know, just, you know, really kind of very subdued, but, you know, it is the effect that you would get, you know, in an outdoor lighting situation. And he was very, very good at capturing that. You know, you look at this painting at first, and you know, you go, but
it's got a lot going on in it, though.
Well, yeah, it does. It has an awful lot going on. More importantly, you have to move you. Okay. There we go. More importantly, you know, than, you know, just the subject matter. Look at the color and how he's used the color. And if you look at the, what happened here? I moved you guys. Okay, how do I get back? Like that. Huh. All right. I don't know. You know, if you begin to look at this, okay, so the horizon line, okay, and if you look at the whole painting, which we're not, we kind of zoomed in on it, okay. You know, it's really almost right about the half. It's a little below, because halfway is really kind of about right there. So he's got that off of that 1/2 mark, and just sitting a little bit lower, but it kind of comes across, and then you follow this, you know, shoreline forward. So it kind of brings your eye in and moves you across really to these boats. And what's the most intense color in there?
Blue.
Well, yeah, it's either the blue here or it's this little touch of red right there.
No, I didn't even see the red.
Yeah, I didn't even see the red either.
I have to lean forward to see it.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah, it's
yeah,
there.
it's pretty much a straight kind of cooler red, and he just popped it in there, and it's just that little touch that helps kind of pull your eye all the way around and then down to the boats, and then whatever this line is, again, kind of points you back, to the houses and the buildings.
Is that same red on the left? Is it chimney or?
Yeah, like right in here, and then
Yeah.
just a little bit on this face right there.
And a base.
Oh,
yeah.
are those people? I was trying to
Well,
figure out what that was.
yeah, it looks like somebody's sitting right there. But yeah, I think this is a chimney up here. But yeah, again, he's just like he's playing with color, and
Very
it's like
subtle.
yeah. I mean, overall, you look at this and it's kind of a blue-gray painting, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about the white? I think it stands out pretty good too.
Yeah, on the boats.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and the house in the background too. And then the little dab of white right at the bottom of the painting.
Yeah, right in here, there's a little bit of light.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at this though, none of this is actually white. It's all a very pale yellow right here, and it's warmer. And when you compare it to, say, the houses back here and things, these have a little more blue or gray in it, and it's cooler in temperature, so that these sit forward.
Yeah, you're right.
And
Yeah.
it's just a little tiny shift, just a least little thing, but it helps push and pull the space, in the painting. So, and that's the thing I like, in looking at his work. You look at it, and at first you can like, okay, and then you kind of look at it a little bit more, and you begin to see, really how he constructed it, more stuff. So you got mountains and big cast shadows and things, and again quick watercolor, real bold strokes, no detail, period.
It looks like a guy reclining in a chair.
It does kind of, doesn't it? I mean, when it's reduced, it kind of looks like somebody laying down, like on the grass or something, and when I first saw it, it's like, oh, okay, you got a figure laying down there, and then no, okay, it's actually a landscape and mountains.
Where do you see a person laying down?
Right here.
Same on the right, his body is kind of in overalls and brown.
Yeah. Right.
His feet are up in the air.
Yeah, this kind of arch right here.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
And the
at all.
dark underneath could be a hammock or something like that.
I didn't see that at all.
I know. I read it a couple of different ways, and it's like, okay.
That's funny. Oh, we
it
look
is.
at everybody looks at it different.
Yeah. This, I really like this painting. Now, this is again probably one of his. I'm guessing probably earlier. A little kind of post-impressionist feeling, but just his use of color and how kind of soft, he has things, and particularly, how he draws the focus, to her face. Look at the lighting here. Very, very sort of very soft and even, but considerably lighter and more intense and rich in color than, say, her arms, or look at the two figures back here.
Mm-hmm.
And look how he's really controlled the value and the intensity of the color, on both of those faces, right? It's just really beautifully done. So.
Where was the light coming from to light her face up that much with the sun setting or the sun coming up? I don't know which it is.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question, because I mean,
she would be backlit and her face would be darker.
Yeah, you would think that, she would be more silhouetted, and maybe she was, in fact, but he made a decision that she was the focal point, and so changed the range of value on her. And again, just a very simplified process, to painting a human face. you know.
I absolutely love the delicacy of that painting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so simple, you know, in many ways. It's just, you know, it's just like, okay, I see exactly how he did it. Now go try to do that. Good luck. You know. And he just, you know, he just pulls it off so nicely. And you know, there's things I could say about it, and it's like, you know, well, okay, you know, why would that work? You know, because I mean, he clearly has, you know, this bolder, stronger outline along the edge of the face, and yet the face feels rounded, and you know, that outline isn't helping it to do that. You know.
And do you notice the eyes are different? They are not the same shape.
No, 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 no. And actually, well, you know, it's at an angle. This one seems to be a little more open, where this one is a little bit more closed. But if you actually look at people when you're painting portraits and things, usually the left eye and the right eye are not the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find that disconcerting, but it's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, nobody's face is actually symmetrical. You know, we think of our faces being symmetrical, but you know, the fact is there's an angle, you know, to, you know, we conceptualize and draw a vertical line, you know, down the center line of the face, you know, from, you know, say the forehead, you know, down through where the nose connects to, you know, the little fulcrum in the lip down to the chin, right? But if you really look at that, you know, from somebody while they're looking straight on or even turned, you know, you'll actually notice that that line doesn't really go straight up and down. Oftentimes, you know, there's a 2 or 3 degree angle, you know, one direction or the other to everybody's face because we're really not symmetrical. And so it's when you're painting portraits and things like that, it's something you want to look at, but in often cases, most portrait painters negate that because they want to try to make the face more perfect and more symmetrical than it is because it's visually probably more pleasing, though you lose something in the actual personality of the painting. So
I'm going to have to go. Thank you, Charles. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah. Well, we're going to look at this one last painting, and then we're going to go.
Okay.
About the last set of eyes,
Mm-hmm.
the one closer to the viewer is usually a little larger, and in this case, smaller.
A little bit smaller, yeah.
Yeah, so that doesn't make any sense. Not only are they kind of different shapes, one's more open than the other, but the one close to the viewer, it
seems to
should
be a little more squinted, yeah.
It should be a little larger than the one farther away from the viewer.
One would think. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yes. Yeah. And you can make the argument that, yeah, you know, again, you know, if you were painting a portrait, you know, like that, then you wanted to make a more perfect looking, you know, figure, then ideally you would make that eye just a little bit larger because it would make sense that it would be bigger because it's closer to us. In this case, you know, it has the effect of, it gives her a particular look, an expression on her face that seems, you know, fairly natural. So, you know, it's something that doesn't really bother me, but you know, you're right in the sense that one would think it would be just the opposite. So,
yeah.
You know, here's the last painting I want to look at, and then it's time for Armando, and even though he's not here to go to lunch, you know, and probably the rest of us too, but again, you know, beautifully painted. You know, look at the separation of light and shadow. So, and use of color and temperature. Yeah. So all I'll say to wrap this up is we didn't get as far as I had hoped today, but I did get, you know, you to look at Hawthorne, and I would encourage all of you to, you know, spend a little time, you know, go look at some of his work. You can learn an awful lot from it. So, anybody got anything to say before we have to go away?
Nope.
Okay. Have a good lunch. We'll see you
Bye-bye.
tomorrow
Bye,
at
everyone.
around about 2. Okay. Enjoy the sunny day.
Charles, did you get the email with the links I sent you about the artist
About
we did?
Ron? Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. Yeah, and I went back and I looked at those, and some of those I'll be sharing
Okay.
probably in about a week or 2. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Very good.
Anyway, thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Yeah, it was interesting.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
but I watched all the videos and everything that I sent you. So,
Yeah.
and there were more videos, but they were redundant. You know, they
Mhm.
were his older work.
Right. Yeah.
And so, okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye.